So lovely to see you all. Good morning. Good morning to absolutely everybody. Really lovely to see you all as always. And a huge welcome to our April Includability Employer Support Group. A huge thank you to our wonderful returning Includability community for joining us once again. I promise we never take for granted that you are lovely enough to come back to us. And if this is your first time with us on an Includability ESG, then a huge welcome to the family. We're thrilled to have you with us this morning, and we very much hope it will be the first of many for you. Once again, we have a brilliantly inspirational lineup of guest speakers for you across the next hour to help inspire you on your journey in creating a healthier and a more inclusive workplace culture for your business. I am delighted to be joined by Will Keenan, Strategic Partnerships Manager at LandAid, Debs Barker, our Residential Learning and Digital Transformation Expert, and of course, the brilliant Dr. Darren Thomas, Chief Medical Officer at Looking After Me. Now, as always, before we begin, we'd love you to introduce yourselves on the chat feed. Please do connect with each other and, of course, with our brilliant guest speakers. And don't hesitate to share your LinkedIn profile if you'd be happy, of course, to do so. Our community really revolves around facilitating great introductions. And, of course, there'll be another great opportunity to introduce yourselves in our breakout rooms in just a little under half an hour. We'll also be sharing various links in the chat feed over the course of the ESG, but please don't be shy. If you've got an upcoming event or some great news that you'd love to share, then please don't hesitate to pop that into the feed. We love shouting about the incredible work of our Includability community. Chris, our lovely comms manager, will be dropping Includability Gold into the chat feed, upcoming events, celebration days, resource links, video links, and of course, supporting with any questions that you might have during the ESG itself. But similarly, if there's any more information that you need at any point around includability, or perhaps to chat through how your business can become an includability committed employer, then you have me, you have James, our wonderful marketing director, and Danny, our brilliant partnerships manager as well. Totally available for you. Thank you, chaps. So anything we can do to support you, please do just let us know, and we are absolutely there for you. Now, last month, Danny took part in the LandAid Sleep Out to help raise much needed funds to support young people who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. It was an incredible event supported by a host of brilliant businesses across the property and wider built environment industry. Companies such as Ashdown Phillips, Macro, Savills, Carter Jonas, and Knight Frank all coming together to raise thousands of pounds for an incredible cause. I'm delighted to introduce to you our very first guest speaker of this morning, Will Keenan, Strategic Partnerships Manager at LandAid. Will, it's wonderful to see you as always, mate, and the virtual floor is yours.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Dave, for that introduction. And Danny, thank you again for taking part in the Sleep Out. Hopefully, after today, some of you will be maybe inspired to take part in some of our events in the months and year ahead. So yeah, without further ado, I am happy to jump right in. I do have some slides that I was hoping to share that I will get ready for us right now. All right, I just want to make sure that that is visible to everyone. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, again, I just want to say good morning and thank you so much for having me. Today, quite simply, we could not have an impact on young people who are facing homelessness without the support of our corporate partners and organizations like the Includability community. So I'm really just delighted to be able to be here this morning and share more about LandAid and how you may be able to get involved. So like Dave mentioned, I am the Strategic Partnerships Manager with LandAid, working across our network of more than 200 corporate supporters to get people excited about supporting our mission, to get them to understand a little bit more about the youth homelessness landscape in the UK. So hopefully we can kind of scratch the surface there here this morning. So I want you to be thinking kind of throughout the course of kind of these slides, what homelessness might mean to you. And as I get underway, maybe for many of us, what that top photo there is maybe the first thing that you think of when you think of homelessness, whether that's people that you see sleeping on the streets, on the way to work, or maybe people you see sleeping in shop doorways or under railway arches. That accompanying figure, just over 10,000, refers to the number of people who were sleeping rough in London, London alone, in 2022, 2023. We know that the number of people who are sleeping rough on the streets in the UK is rising year on year, and it has long reached the point of a national crisis. But we also know that homelessness is more than just sleeping on the streets. While this can be the most dangerous and often the most visible form of homelessness that we see, it really is just scratching the surface, the tip of the iceberg. And the reality is much more complex. And this is really just an illustration of kind of now where LandAid steps in, working particularly with young people who are facing homelessness. So now looking to that bottom figure, in 2022 and 2023, over that same time period, 136,000 young people ages 16 to 25 approached their local council because they were facing some sort of homelessness. That is unfortunately a rise of more than 7,000 young people from the year prior. And what we can understand from this figure is that there really is a staggering number of young people who are hidden beneath the surface. They're not necessarily sleeping rough, and we're facing what we would call hidden homelessness. So they may be sleeping on friends' sofas, they may be in emergency accommodations, unsafe Airbnbs, what have you. So to provide you with a little bit more context about why this crisis is the way that it is and what the current climate looks like. We have, again, unfortunately seen a steep increase over the past several years of youth homelessness in general. We know that nearly half of the young people facing homelessness are women, and that domestic violence is 5 times more likely to be a factor when it comes to young women who are facing homelessness. Only 2 in 5 young people say that they have enough money to live on. We know that the rising cost of living and inflation is a top worry for young people, as it is for us all, but particularly for the young people that we serve and the vulnerabilities that they come with. It's a particular crisis. And then certainly we've seen a rise as well in homelessness due to evictions. So what is causing these concerns, this crisis? Undoubtedly, the largest reason we see for young people facing homelessness is family breakdown. That accounts for nearly half of the young people that we serve. And there's evidence that this is becoming more common as a result of, again, increased cost of living pressures. However, we know that family breakdown alone does not inevitably lead to homelessness for young people. We also know that in the UK, people living under the age of 18 are not entitled to full universal credit. And they receive less housing benefit as well. So in effect, they're essentially penalized for being young while also experiencing homelessness. So that is certainly an issue that we've seen kind of with the population that we serve. We also know that there are too few privately owned accessible rental properties for young people in the UK today. The number of young people paying more than a third of their income is higher than it's ever been before. And rental prices rose nearly 5% last year across England. For someone who is in the rental market, I'm in Brighton, kind of facing that, and so I'm experiencing those things acutely as well, but do have kind of the privileges that I come with that the vast majority of young people who we're serving do not. We also know that many young people are too far from the job market, so we're seeing a rise in youth unemployment, and this is particularly linked to mental health issues and largely accounted for by increases in claims for learning disabilities, behavioral disorders, and ADHD. So that is the wider context of the issue. Would love to now speak a little bit about how LandAid helps and how you can support LandAid in tackling youth homelessness in the UK. So we step in with the help of the UK property industry primarily and a network of really outstanding partners to provide safe, secure, and affordable accommodation for young people who are experiencing the homelessness that we see. We are the property industry's charity, and we will not deviate from the mission that we have until there is an end to youth homelessness in the UK, because we know that no young person should have to experience the trauma and the insecurity that comes from being without a home. And so that is obviously a very bold aim. And by bringing an end to youth homelessness, we mean making it rare, brief, and non-recurring for the young people that we serve. So I want to tell you a little bit more now about how we help because, again, we know that no young person should have to experience the trauma and insecurity that comes with homelessness. So LandAid is a unique organization in that we are a charitable trust. So that means that by supporting our mission, you'll not just be helping a single charity, but a number of really incredible, worthy frontline charities all across the UK. So participating in one of our events, the Sleep Out, for example, will support projects in the region where each participant participated in the event itself. So we act as a bridge between our corporate and charity partners, and we look to connect those groups through two main ways. Through our grants program, corporate partners have the opportunity to raise funds that directly support frontline charities to build capital projects that will house young people facing homelessness. And that includes 3 different grant schemes that we currently focus on through capital projects, emergency accommodation, and move-on support. And then as well as donations of funds, partners also have the opportunity to contribute their time, their skills, and their expertise through our pro bono program for charity partners that need all kinds of support. So this is all with the ultimate goal of creating homes for young people. So every one of the homes that we provide will give somewhere to live for many thousands of young people for decades to come. But we also know that our grant making delivers really substantial and often transformational change for the life prospects of the young people who are housed. In that way, the building itself is obviously critical, but really is so much more than just a roof over a head. When we're making grant decisions, we're looking to understand what kind of tailored wraparound support is provided to the young people, as well as what impact that has on their lives beyond just having secure shelter. So in every one of the homes we create, young people receive support that is really individually tailored to their needs. That's a really critical component of our kind of grant making decisions, and tangible improvements to their well-being. So that can include improved access to employment training and skills, improved mental health, less involvement in crime, and greater independence overall. So we are currently coming to the end of our 2021 to 2024 strategy as an organization. And the support that we've received from our partners makes our mission, ambition, and impact really possible. So we've been able to make some really significant progress against the current strategic cycle's aims. So since 2021, thanks to support from our amazing network, we have been able to achieve over £4 million invested in UK charities, over 950 bed spaces towards that 1,000 bed space target that have been funded or created to date. And we are very confident that we will reach that target by the June kind of end of cycle. And we've also supported more than 100 charities and projects around the UK to deliver vital services to the young people that we serve. So with continued support from you all and our network of partners, we are, again, confident that we're able to provide the 1,000 bed spaces for young people experiencing homelessness, and to grow our pro bono program so that it delivers £1 million worth of pro bono support a year. So that has been a lot of information. Want to give you a brief overview of how you can help, because we know that you and your colleagues around the UK can get involved to be part of good and create real social change. So as I mentioned, we have over 200 partners within the property industry that are supporting our network, and we would be really thrilled to continue to grow that and really scale the impact that we've seen. One way that Dave mentioned and that Danny participated in recently is to participate in one of our events. So that includes our Sleep Out, which takes place each March. And then we excitingly have 2 brand new events for 2024. A quiz in July taking place in 6 cities across the UK, and a Trek Challenge event that's taking place in September, both on location in the Black Mountains in Wales and through a virtual participation option as well. So these are really just great ways to have fun, network, and raise vital funds for our mission all at the same time. Again, just a little bit more information about our pro bono program. That's just a brokering service that we offer, essentially matchmaking, taking requests from charity partners and nonprofits across the UK, matching them with the support and expertise from our corporate partners in the industry. So we have opportunities beyond just property, searches, architecture, planning, things like that. We also have a need for back office functions like HR, comms, marketing. Chances are, if you have a skill set within your office, we could benefit from it. Finally, we have our ambassador program, which is just a really great way for young professionals, often in the early stages of their career, to be representatives of LandAid, helping raise awareness of our mission, raise vital funds, and increase our impact. That being said, we also have opportunities kind of as wide as your imaginations. If you'd like to put on your own event, we would be more than happy to talk through that with you and make sure that you are maximizing the support for your organization, all while helping our mission. So really appreciate the time. I think I am just at time here. Please do feel free to contact me with any questions for more information and for opportunities to partner. Love getting our name out there and love the opportunity to work with really excellent organizations like you all. So thanks again for your time, your support. Really look forward to hearing from you.
Will, you are absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. Absolutely brilliant. And the work that LandAid commits to is extraordinary. As Will has described, there are a whole host of amazing ways that your business can support should you wish. And I know Chris will be dropping a link into the chat feed, and you'll have so much support throughout your fundraising, as Danny can absolutely attest to. Will, you're incredible. And thank you for being with us this morning and for allowing us to seal you away. I know you're super busy this morning, so thank you so much for coming on board and being with us. It's been wonderful to have you as always. And now for our next guest speaker, I'm delighted to introduce the amazing Debs Barker, learning and digital transformation expert, senior HR practitioner, founder of Hippo Learning, and of course, one of our wonderful Includability ambassadors. Debs, it's so lovely to have you with us as always. And when you're ready, the virtual floor is yours.
Wow, thank you. How do you follow that? Actually, as I was listening to Will talk, I thought this next presentation really is a fantastic segue into how we can help Will, your organisation. And you talked about expertise. I'm happy to support you in any way I can with young people and apprenticeships. So please do reach out and get in touch. It's quite emotional to hear your story. Anyway, sorry. We had this last month, didn't we, with employment law and charities. So, who am I? I'm Debs Barker. I've been in learning and development for 30 years. I know I look about 21, but I have been in learning and development for 30 years. I'm going to tell you a bit of a story. I'm a massive storyteller. Learning and development professionals are extroverted, slightly longer. I make no apology for this because we've got to cover a lot of ground, but I will make sure that we're talking that's relevant and there's some real key takeaways for you. So I'm going to share my screen. Bear with, I am a technical Luddite. I've cut my craft on an OHT, if anyone knows what that is, which is a transparency. And the most technical I got was an OHT with a piece of paper rolling down the presentation, the PowerPoint. That said, I've implemented lots of learning and management systems, so I'm probably doing myself a disservice. Anyway, let me share my screen and we'll talk about apprenticeships and how they can elevate your business. So, here we go. So, can you see my screen? It's loading, it says. Bear with. Can you see my screen? Right, let me pop it on to slideshow. Okay, so who is this woman? Last year, I was in a really enviable position to be invited to the Royal Opera House in London to have a day of all things learning and development. And this is Dame Martha Lane Scott, who is a House of Lords peer. And some of you may or may not know that she was the founder of lastminute.com. She's currently a huge advocate for sustainable business, and the talk that she presented was around what makes a good company. And I think this is a really good and important point to start to think about what is a good company to work for and why apprenticeships are important within that context. Martha started lastminute.com, created a whole boom in the travel industry without thinking for a minute about carbon footprints. It was the 90s. She had this huge success. By admission, didn't know what she was doing, created possibly one of the biggest revolutions in the travel industry that we know today, Ryanair, EasyJet, all of that kind of stuff. So she's now kind of going, what does that mean for sustainability? And what's that like for corporate responsibility? And she talked about businesses to be sustainable are going to have to think about wider societal impact going forward. And I have to agree. What we've got to think about here is, what do we want to be famous for? What do we want to know in terms of our business, and who are we as a business? And putting back to society beyond profit is really, really important. And if we think about a couple of examples of what that means, it's things like the Enron disaster, where profit was put before people. The factory in Bangladesh that collapsed because people were making fast fashion. The crash of 2008, where the subprime market caused issues that affected us all globally. So it's not just about that individual profit, but the wider societal impact. And apprenticeships forms part of that. And I think they've had a bad rap, but I've been immersed in apprenticeships for a number of years, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that if you'll indulge me. So we're going to say goodbye to Martha and start to think about apprenticeships in the context of what makes a good company to work for. So I'm going to ask you a question, and feel free to pop the answer in the chat. So funding, only 2%, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Only 2% of organisations pay the apprenticeship levy, which came in 2017. You've got 24 months to spend it, or it goes back to the Treasury. So there's a scramble for it, or some people just see it as a tax, which is a travesty. So, question. Since the levy was introduced in 2017, how much levy do you think has been returned to the Treasury? Is it 1 billion, 1.5 billion, or 3.5 billion? What do we think? Let's have a look. I've got 1, 2. Have a look at the chat. I've given it away now. It's 3.5 billion. What an absolute travesty. What an absolute travesty. That money goes back to the Treasury, and it's not ring fence for training and development. Oh no, it just goes into the coffers. And a lot of organisations aren't capitalising on this. And let me talk to you about why. I think people don't have good apprenticeship support. They don't have dedicated teams, or if you're a small to medium-sized enterprise, you just don't know how to do it. And that's where I can come in and help you. I seem to have lost, yeah, there we go. As I've said, only 2% of employers pay the apprenticeship levy. That means that a lot of organisations don't pay the levy. But they were asked to pay levy contributions for SMEs, but not to the same extent as an over £3.3 million organisation. But in the budget in March, the Chancellor made some changes. So he took away the need for funding for under 21s. So to Will's point around helping people, young people, get the start they need, and I do believe that education is key. So SMEs, if you've got somebody, a young person that you want to take through an apprenticeship, it's fully funded, no contribution whatsoever. There are some other rules. So there is a 0.5% contribution thereafter. So anyone over 21, you will have to make a contribution. but it's 0.5% of what we call a funding band. A funding band is just an arbitrary figure that levy-paying organisations pay for an apprentice. To give you an example, a degree apprenticeship is going to cost you 27 grand, like it would if you were paying for it as a student. So 0.5% of that, you can do the maths. And I've given you an example. An accounts assistant level 3 is going to cost you £600. However, and this is the rub, levy-paying organisations can transfer to SMEs they used to be able to transfer 25% of their levy pot if they're not spending it to 50% of their levy pot. How fantastic is that? It means it reduces your contribution to naught. So start talking to your supply chain. Grants available for young apprentices. So taking on somebody between 16 and 18 years old, you're going to get £1,000 to go towards your costs, recruitment costs or anything else. Okay. So there's some incentives. There are other incentives that you can, and they change, and sometimes they go up. In COVID, we got £3,000, and if there's somebody in care, you're going to get slightly more grant from the government to take that person on. Okay. And dispelling the myth, the levy funds almost 650 different types of apprenticeships, and here's a list of them. And I've put people through these: biomedical science, accountancy, solicitor, doctor. Now that's in development. It's nearly there, but you'll be able to go to a level 8 doctor in the very near future. I checked yesterday. It's nearly ready to go. Train driver, software engineer, mortician, outdoor activity instructor, greenkeeper. So you've got a mixture of professional up to degree, up to level 7 and up to nearly PhD equivalent, right the way through to your level 2s and 3s. And I'm going to talk to you a bit about the levels. There they are. There's up to level 7 here, but the level 8's coming soon. So we can take you through levels 2 to level 7s, be your degree apprenticeship is your master's, your level 6, level 5 is foundation degree, HNC, HND, level 3 equivalent to 2 A levels. And so we had a lot of people in my last organisation do their level 3 and go on to the degree apprenticeships as a clear career pathway. So lots and lots of really good stuff going on in apprenticeships. Challenges, why apprenticeships? Well, for me, I was in healthcare and we knew that 30% of our business could retire in the next 5 years, so we needed a strategy. There's rapid change. We are seeing differences and roles that didn't exist 5 years ago now exist. I look today at one of those roles from the apprenticeship, content creator. Who knew we would have a content creator apprenticeship or a role that actually created Instagram type posts, etc. So we need to adapt quickly and we need to be future fit. It's really important that we think about the apprenticeship advantage. Why apprenticeships? What's important about apprenticeships? They provide a unique blend of on-the-job training and formal education. So you can get a degree whilst studying, you can earn whilst you learn, and businesses can build a loyal colleague base. So a case for apprenticeships. One study found that 85% apprentices stay in employment, and 64% of these continued working with the same employer. So if I think about my own organisation, the attrition for an apprentice is going to be far lower than somebody who comes in already qualified. So there's some real benefits for having that sort of ground up approach. They're often well versed in the company culture and they're very loyal, creating engagement and sustainable business practices. So back to that question, what makes a good company to work for? So it's not just about spending your levy, it's about or putting people on programs. What I found was really having to wrap your arms around it to make it work. It's no good just putting somebody on and letting them sink or swim. It's about targeting those programs, developing apprenticeships specifically focused on attracting people. What I really loved about apprenticeships for me was that social mobility. I can't afford to go and do a degree. I can now because all of those course fees are met. Mentorship, who can we pair with somebody in the business that can help them and support them and help them to learn beyond the nuts and bolts of the qualification that they're doing? And this allows people to connect with others in the business. And it's amazing how many people want to help people as they're going through an apprenticeship to really succeed. And it creates an inclusive culture. So you're going to get diversity of thought. You're going to get people who wouldn't necessarily normally have been a doctor. I remember last year when my daughter finished her A-levels and I went to the college on the day to pick up the results, and there was this girl there who said, who I could see was upset because she hadn't got the grade she wanted and she wanted to be a doctor. And I said to her, you could see she was visibly upset. And I said, you do know that you can get into healthcare through apprenticeships in a different way. You don't have to panic. And her response to me is, my dad won't let me. My dad wants me to go to a Russell group. My dad wants me to do this. And I couldn't convince her of this. Imagine if you can get somebody from Will's program who has had homelessness, who is bright as a button, has had fallen on hard times, has fallen out with their parents, and somebody sees something in them and helps them to progress through a healthcare process, right the way through to a level 8 doctor qualification. Imagine having that type of diversity in an organisation. It allows diversity of thought and a diversity of experience. So who is this? This is me. This is my dad and my brother. This is circa 1981. And I want to share with you my story because I think this is really powerful. So my dad, bless him, was a Geordie. He's no longer with us. He was an amazing human being. He was in construction. He moved to Manchester from the northeast in the mid-60s, where accents were particularly frowned upon, and he was struggling to get work. And so he had elocution lessons and he kind of eradicated that accent, and became a honorary Mancunian, big Man City fan, loved the bones of him. And he was an electrician, and he, when we were growing up, would work in GC in Trafford Park as an electrician in the day, and by weekends, because it wasn't very well paid, he would go and do extra additional work rewiring people's homes to get money for our holidays. And this was one of them. I think this was another North Wales holiday in the 80s, where we as individuals would enjoy the fruits of his labour. But he wanted more, and so he went back to college and he went to the then Salford Polytechnic and studied HR. And he became my role model. And about 11 or 12, so 1984, you can work out my age, 1984, he got his first job as a training officer. And he was working in manufacturing. He moved to a company called Thorny MI, and he came home the day he got the job and he sang, I'm in the money. And this sounds really crass, but it was all about Dad moving up that social ladder from working class Geordie who couldn't get a job in the 60s to taking a degree at night school and moving into a job that was better paid. The power of education. And he never forgot that, because he looked after his apprentices, and he rose through the ranks to a HR director, but he always looked after his apprentices, to the point that now my mum's on her own, some of his apprentices are still in contact with my mum, come and see her. And such was the impact my dad had on those apprentices. So he was a real role model for me, my dad. He was called John, and I miss him greatly. However, I then moved into HR. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And I went to Salford myself and studied HR and did my postgrad and masters back in the 90s. It seems like a long time ago now. I started out my career in Withenshaw, offering careers advice and guidance to the long-term unemployed. So I've seen that social deprivation. I've seen illiteracy. I've seen criminality. I've seen the lack of educational opportunities. And it was heartbreaking to see that, and to try and support those individuals through support. I ran women returners programs, I ran back to work programs, long-term unemployed programs at that time, before moving into HR roles post-qualification. And then in 2017, the levy came in, and I was tasked with spending the levy at Spire Healthcare. And I took what I learned in my early career around education, what's available, working with FE colleges, and applied that there. And I went from something like 3 or 4 at each site, sort of low level, level 2 apprenticeships, to a full program in a year. So I went from probably about 20 learners to 350 in a year. And we started to think about what our strategic impetus was and how we were going to build for the future. And it was amazing. And what I want to share is a couple of stories around 2 individuals. So Linda and Colin. So Linda and Colin were 2 of my apprentices. Now, they were older apprentices. So Linda was had been through a divorce, had started nursing, paying for it herself and working part-time as a healthcare assistant. And she came to me, she was in our Blackpool hospital, and said, I can't afford, I've got 4 kids, I can't afford to carry on my studies. And what I could give her was the opportunity to transfer onto the nurse apprenticeship. And she was so grateful. We managed to cut down the time she spent because we could accredit her prior learning, and she moved through to qualification. And then there was Colin. Now, Colin was 55, and he came to me and he said, look, Debs, I really want to be an ODP apprentice. I've always harboured this burning ambition to be an apprentice, an ODP, but I can't afford to do it. Can you help me? And we did. We put him on the ODP apprenticeship. However, he confessed to me that he didn't have his maths qualification, and it's needed in healthcare. Not in everything, but it's needed in healthcare. So I agreed with the powers that be to support him through that. And him and a number of other colleagues, people with English as a second language, we helped them through boot camps there, English and maths, and got them through. So it was a really powerful story. And Colin's still working in our Hull, I say I'm not there anymore, but our Hull hospital as an ODP. An ODP is equivalent of a theatre nurse, and it's a 3-year degree. Okay, so I'm going to skip this one because this is about a women returner going into the tech industry, and I'm conscious of time. But if you are interested, this is a career pathway moving from software tester right the way through to a software developer, and creating those really strong career pathways using apprenticeships to build out and really create a compelling piece around women returners. So it's not just about young people, it's about women returners, it's about underrepresented groups, and how you can attract those individuals by using the power of apprenticeships. Okay, so measuring the impact. 78% of employers say that apprenticeships help them improve productivity, and the source for that is the apprenticeships government, the gov.uk site, and I've put that in. And measuring that impact, higher productivity, stronger resilience, and positivity all round. It doesn't do your brand any harm. In fact, Spire Healthcare, I won the Nursing Times Apprenticeship Award for the best nurse apprenticeship in 2021, and they are still probably one of the strongest apprenticeship brands in the healthcare space today, which I'm really, really proud of. I recruited 166 nurses in the middle of apprentices in the middle of COVID in 4 months. Nearly killed me. We did it. And today, some of those people are graduating. And I looked yesterday, and one of them has moved from Spire into the NHS. And this is the power of social and society, isn't it? It's training them in one place and knowing that you may lose them to others, but knowing that she's now in that NHS space and really doing some good for society by working in the NHS. She may come back to Spire, who knows, but how fantastic is that as a story? So what did I learn? and I've just got that. I want one of those as the grab there. These are my absolutes. Make sure if you're putting an apprenticeship program in place, put a structured path for building critical skills and expertise. And this is beyond what the apprenticeship provider can give. This is wrapping your arms around it, identifying roles and making sure that you're clear on what you can do. And the career pathways, make sure people know what's available and how to apply. It's really simple, but it's a step that people miss. Advertise it and shout about it. Myth busting, dispel the myths and misconceptions. It's low paid. I'm going to get a bucket of steam and a left-handed screwdriver. It's only for young people. It can be, and we can ring fence that, but it's not. It can be for the Collins and the Lindas of this world. And strategic planning, what are you trying to achieve? If we think about Will's 21 to 24 plan, how can this training help build our skill set to deliver that imperative? Make crucial decisions about the way you're going to find your apprentices as well. I made the decision that I'm going to do it internally first before I look outward. And that's what we did. We built our internal pipeline before we looked outward. And we only looked outward once we'd exhausted our internal supply. Role identification. Is there any roles you can earmark? Are there entry-level roles? What can you do? Is there suitable apprenticeships that you can look at? And I can help with that if you want to get some advice and guidance on that. Provider partnerships, this is key. What I found is they are not all made the same. Some will give you value add, some will throw other qualifications in to whet your appetite. Some of them are better than others. Check their Ofsted, check what people are saying about them. Do a bit of a Glassdoor review on them. See what people are saying about your providers. Just don't go with the first one. Some will tick box, some won't. Just check out your providers before you go with them. And regulatory compliance. Keep up to date with regulations. The ESFA, the Education Skills Agency, will change them often, and don't fall foul of employment legislation. What I mean by that is check your employment contracts. It's really important that you do this, that you make sure you've got a clause in your apprenticeship in your contract, your employment contract, if anyone's on an apprenticeship, that says that they are on a modern apprenticeship. And the reason for that is that there is some little known older law that says if you don't specify in your employment contract, you will be liable if there was anything to happen. So if you're on a 4-year degree, you will be liable for them and paying them, even if you remove them from the organisation. Not that I'm saying you should for the full 4 years, and you don't want to fall foul of that. Okay, so those are my must-haves. But I want to leave on a positive note by saying, by tying apprenticeships to diversity and inclusion, and the broader goals, I gave you the example of the nurse moving from Spire to NHS, we can create a robust strategy and it future-proofs us. Think about all those nurses that are retiring, think about solicitors, accountancy, think about what it is that you want, and let's not just worry about the higher level degree apprenticeships. It can be entry-level roles as well. And it's an integrated approach that can really help create an equitable society and a more sustainable world. I do believe that education is key. So I'm going to leave you on that. I am probably way over time. Oh my goodness, I am. But hopefully,
no, you're awesome. You are absolutely awesome.
I hope I've given you a bit of something. I did lots of notes and then didn't read any of them. So hopefully it gives you a flavour for apprenticeships. Don't believe the hype. The apprenticeship starts are down, but they are just wonderful and they give you so much opportunity. I don't know why people aren't shouting from the rooftops about them.
Debs, I couldn't agree more. I think you're wonderful. And thank you so much. You are fantastic, not only for your guidance on the value of apprenticeships and the positive impact that they can have in supporting inclusion within the workplace, but also for sharing your story. Just massively appreciate you and all of your time with us this morning, Debs. Thank you so much. You're amazing. Now, as you cast your votes, I'm delighted to introduce our final speaker, the brilliant Dr. Darren Thomas, lifestyle GP and Chief Medical Officer at Looking After Me. So much love for Darren and the amazing wellbeing support he provides within the workplace. Darren, it's great to see you as always, mate, and welcome, and the virtual floor is yours.
Thanks, Dave. What a splendid introduction. I'll try and live up to it. And thanks everyone for hanging around. It's the last talk I'm talking about sleep, so it's going to be a tough ask, isn't it? But I'll try my best. Let's see if I can share my slides with you. Can everyone see those slides? Yeah, fantastic. Great, good. Let's get rid of this. Oh, there you go. Great. Yeah, so as Dave said, I'm Darren. My background is I'm an NHS GP. I'm a lifestyle medicine physician, and I train doctors in Southend to become GPs. And I sort of fell into workplace wellbeing, I guess. I'm very lucky to be married to a HR consultant, and as couples often do, we found ourselves swapping stories over the dinner table, and I was constantly whinging about the lack of resources in the NHS, in primary care in particular, and how frustrating it is that you can't do the job that you want to do because there's not enough money. And my wife sort of talking on the flip side about how useless at the time the wellbeing packages that she had were, and how frustrating it was that they were pumping all this resource into something and getting not a very good level of service. So although I still NHS GP and still teach, I sort of decided to see if I could add something in workplace wellbeing and maybe whether we could do things a bit differently. Debs' point when she talked about the impact of sort of the profit before people culture, just really, I thought it was absolutely spot on, and is what I'm all about. So I'm not going to ask who has ever struggled to sleep, but I'm willing to guess that probably most of us. And I'm willing to guess that probably a few of us find it difficult to prioritize sleep on a day-to-day basis. So I want to talk to you about sleep. And it's a really hot topic. There's lots of new and interesting science. And I want to focus on sleep in the context of the workplace. If I can get back to that slide. So about a third of us, or more than a third of us, don't sleep enough. So we should be getting about 7 to 9 hours. So it's a really common problem, and it has a huge impact on our individual health and well-being. So really, it affects more or less every system in the body. So it's got an impact on our physical health, our risk of dementia, chronic disease, memory, mental health conditions, how fat or thin we are. It even has an impact on our lifespan. So up to a point, the longer we sleep, the longer we live. So really quite amazing stuff, the new science is coming out. And here I just want to share with you some of the effects that poor sleep can have. And as you start to look at these, you can see why, in fact, poor sleep is not just a problem for us as individuals, but in fact, there's a real risk that it can affect others within the team, and it can even influence your workplace culture. So, look at some of these things like risk-taking behaviors, our impact on our communication, our ability to make adjustments. And it's not just that, but actually employees with poor sleep are twice as likely to go off sick. So sleep really is a big deal. It has a huge impact on us as individuals, our health and well-being, but also potentially even, the organizational culture of where we work. So as we learn more about sleep and understand its impact, I believe we really need to give it some priority. So hopefully I've convinced you it's worth 10 minutes of your attention. And before I go on to share 3 sleep hygiene tips with you, I'm just going to quickly talk a little bit about what sleep actually is, what it involves, why we need it. So I promise at this stage not to get too nerdy, but I am a doctor, so bear with me. So this diagram represents sort of the ideal sleep architecture, what we call it, of what we get in a really good night's sleep. So this person has slept a good 8 hours from 10 to 6. And during a normal sleep period like this, you progress through sort of 5 or 6 cycles of sleep, and each cycle is made up of a few different individual sort of sleep stages. So we'll just have a look at it now. So this person probably went to sleep about 9:30, 10:15. They fall asleep at 10. That's this little orange box on the left. That's when you're dozing off, you're transitioning into sleep. And it's often when you get those funny, they're called myotonic jerks, where you suddenly kick your leg out and you feel like you're falling. My wife kicks me in the leg most nights with that. And that lasts about 10 minutes. And then you'll go into into light sleep, those green boxes. And during that, your mind and body slow down, you settle into sleep, and it's a time where you're most easily woken up. And you can see that's not just when you're falling asleep, you're going in and out of light sleep all the way through the night. And the next stage is more of a deep sleep, the light blue box, and the body really is in recovery mode. It slows down even further. Your heart rate drops, your blood pressure drops, your breathing rate drops. And at the same time, your overall brain activity slows right down. And then the final stage is what really interests me as a doctor. That's REM sleep, or rapid eye movement sleep. Probably most of you have heard of it. And it's that navy blue box at the end. And during REM sleep, amazingly, your brain activity shoots right back up to the levels when you're awake. So this is why we have our most intense dreams, during REM sleep. And actually, to prevent injury, most of our muscles during REM sleep are completely paralyzed. So it keeps us from acting out those vivid dreams, which in my case would be darting around my bedroom thinking I'm Indiana Jones, I suspect. And as the night goes on in each cycle, your time in REM sleep gets longer, which is really important. So why do we do this? Well, previously we thought sleep was all about recovery and just about switching off, allowing your mind and your body to rest. And while it does happen, sleep is actually much more than just a passive activity. And it's a period when your brain is really busy. So it's engaged in a number of functions necessary to life. And I like to think of it as almost like a tidying up process, sort of both in terms of recovery, but also in terms of physical changes. And virtually every part of the body experiences notable changes during sleep. So when you fall asleep, thousands of neurons in your brain switch from a waking to a sleeping state, and they send signals throughout the body. And while the biological role of sleep sort of still isn't fully understood, research has shown that it reinforces your heart health, your immune system, regulates your metabolism, and like we said, it even affects how long we live. So going back to REM sleep, during that REM sleep, your brain is busy and it's processing thoughts you've had throughout the day. It's processing memories. It's moving memories from short to long term, or perhaps clearing out your short term memories that you don't need anymore. It's processing emotions from the day. So it's almost like having a form of counseling while you're asleep. And that's probably why it's so linked to mental health problems if we're not getting enough sleep. When I first heard this fact, I was absolutely staggered. Did you know that sleep actually physically changes the cellular structure of your brain? And I want to show you an example. The brain plays a role in removing a plaque, like a protein called amyloid, that can damage brain cells. And if it builds up significantly enough, it can cause a type of dementia called Alzheimer's disease. So here's some brain scans, some amyloid PET scans. And you can see three different brains here. So the brain on the right is entirely normal. The brain on the middle is functioning normally, but has some of that red plaque that you can see, that red color, which is the amyloid there. And on the left-hand side, there is a brain of a person with Alzheimer's disease, and you can see quite widespread, sort of diffuse red plaque, which is laid down there. I just want to give you a frightening thought related to this. And that when we first found out this, we thought that if you, during the day when you build up amyloid, if you don't have a good night's sleep to help clear this off, well, that's probably okay, because if you sleep well for the next few days, the next week, it will get cleared. We now know actually that does not happen. So a bad night's sleep will more than likely mean that amyloid stays with you forever. Now, obviously, one bad night's sleep is not going to make any difference in the grand scheme of things, but it does sort of remind us that, like with any lifestyle change, consistency is really important. So, 2 or 3, 4 or 5 bad nights sleep per week, and it potentially is going to add up and cause some problems. So I'll stop being nerdy now, and I'm going to talk to you about how to actually practically help your team. I'll start with a very short plug. So if you don't have help from an employee health and wellbeing program, and I would say particularly one that's focused on sort of proactive preventative measures, then I'd encourage you maybe to think about whether it might be of benefit. Other excellent programs are available, but let me know if we can help. And I'd absolutely see it as an investment in your team. The evidence suggests you should get sort of a 6-fold return on investment, looking at productivity and retention and reduced sickness absence and all sorts of stuff. But here are my 3 sleep hygiene tips. Sleep hygiene is sort of a term that doctors use to describe basically, measures that improve our sleep, really. And they are natural light, movement, and work-life balance and boundaries. And I just want to spend a minute or two just explaining what I mean by those things. So natural light is so important to our sleep. So we have an internal body clock called a circadian rhythm, and we've developed that over hundreds of thousands of years. And that's what's responsible for making us feel alert during the day and sleepy at night time. And obviously, over all that time, for most of that, we've been living and working outdoors. And so light has become a really important regulator of this body clock. And one of the problems with society today is that in terms of light levels, we're effectively all living in sort of dark caves. We're all inside with much lower levels of light than we get from being outdoors, even on a cloudy day. So bright light is crucial. And we know that particularly in the first sort of 6 hours of a working day, it's really important. And there is tons of evidence out there that not only is this linked with improved sleep, but actually increased daytime performance and just overall well-being at work. So we're talking outside, ideally, but if not, by windows or using skylights. So I just encourage you just to think about your own working environment and that of your team. Can you adapt it? Do you need to make some changes? Do you need to move? Do you need to encourage the team to get outdoors together in the morning? So just a quick example, I was a GP partner for 10 years. Although like Debs, I also look 21. And our practice was based in a pretty typical gloomy NHS building with sort of faded brown carpets and that funny smell, and really quite minimal natural light. In the practice, we didn't have the resource really to change that. So what we decided to do was to get the whole team out at 10 and at 12, so in the first 6 hours. And for those that could, we went for a 10, 20-minute walk around the block. We were lucky to have a field nearby. It exposed us to natural light, so we got all of these benefits, but it also actually really helped improve our social connection as a team, and it got us moving. And movement's my second tip. So movement is also hugely beneficial to our sleep. And evidence suggests that actually just 30 minutes a day is a benefit. That's, that could be a brisk walk, for example. And again, in our current working environments, particularly in the UK, we sort of lack movement. So we walk less than 4,000 steps a day on average in the UK. And we think our ancestors walked at least sort of 4 or 5 times this. So we're designed to move a lot more than we do now. And sometimes this can be really hard, can't it? It's a bit hard. It sort of feels impossible to change this. We can't, unfortunately, all be landscape gardeners, but we can introduce movement throughout our working days. So some examples. So we've just spoken about the walking coffee breaks. There are other powerful forms of movement. So using the stairs, if you can, whenever you can, is an excellent form of exercise snack. Exercise snacks themselves within the office. So that's a term used to describe sort of brief forms of exercise, which could be anything depending on the makeup of your team. So it could be yoga, it could be press ups, could be squat, could be walking on the spot. And there's lots of evidence that 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 20 seconds of that every half an hour really makes a difference. Walking meetings. If you can meet someone face to face, if you can walk, the evidence is you're going to be more productive, your communication will improve, your creativity is going to go up. Do you need to invest in stand-up desks? Really beneficial. Could you introduce a step challenge to your team? So there's loads of different ideas depending on your team, your working environment, and there are ways, even in the most sedentary working environments, to introduce movement. And then my last tip is work-life balance and boundaries. I just think this is just so important, particularly having worked in the NHS for 15 years or so. It's something we really struggle with. There's sort of 2 aspects to this, really. So one is that in order to sleep well, we need to allow our minds to wind down before bed. So we live in a society of just constant connection. And I'd be willing to bet that a good proportion of us check our emails outside of work. And if you do, you're not alone. So 82% of us check our emails outside of our working hours. And on average, we check our emails every 37 minutes. So we're not just constantly connected with, social media and screens otherwise, we're also increasingly finding it difficult to switch off from work. And the second aspect to this goes back to light. So we've just heard about natural light being amazing at helping set our body clock, our circadian rhythm. In the evening, light can basically have the opposite effect. So unfiltered bright light that we get from screens in the evening can confuse our circadian rhythm, which we've lived with for hundreds of thousands of years. So for both of these reasons, it is essential that we encourage healthy boundaries. And that starts with setting an example as leaders in our teams. And we need to, there aren't quick fixes for this. We need to build this into our organizational culture and perhaps even consider something like a digital disconnect policy, perhaps even to allow our teams to help them to switch off. So that was a very quick run through, perhaps quicker than I'd intended because I know we're running over a bit. But hopefully you've got a better understanding of sleep, an appreciation of why it's so important, and perhaps even some ideas to take away to your teams. If you're interested and you want to do some more reading about sleep, I'm not on commission, but Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker is an absolutely incredible read. It's got all of the new sleep science in it. Blew my mind when I read it, even as a lifestyle GP. And I'd love to chat more. So if you want to connect on LinkedIn or drop me an email, I'd love to help where I can. Thanks so much for your time today. It's just been such a real pleasure to just share some thoughts with you. And welcome any comments or questions if you've got any.
Darren, you are absolutely amazing. Thank you so much as always. So much wonderful knowledge, and I would implore everybody to connect with Darren and his brilliant organization. The support that he provides is absolutely fantastic. Amazing access to some of the best wellbeing solutions out there, either for yourself or for your team or for your business as a whole. You should definitely connect with Darren. He is brilliant. Darren, thank you again so much for allowing us to steal you away. It's wonderful to catch up and to hear your brilliance as always. And following on from that, of course, a hot date for your diaries is our next employee support group. That will be happening on Wednesday, the 29th of May at 10:30 a.m, where we'll be hosting 4 new guest speakers, including the amazing Kay Moores, ND of Drum Studios, talking all things social media accessibility, and James Hand, co-founder of Geeky, chatting through strategies to reduce your personal carbon footprint. Please do join us. We'd, of course, love to see you there. And that registration link will be dropping in the chat feed in the next couple of moments. Chris, thank you so much, mate. That's brilliant. And that brings us to the end of our ESG this morning. A huge, huge thank you to our brilliant guest speakers, to Will, Debs, and Darren. What unbelievable legends you all are. Thank you for all of your insights and for sharing your wisdom with us today. And from James, Chris, Danny, and myself, and the whole team at Includability and Disrupt Agency, a huge thank you to every single one of you for joining us this morning. Let's keep working in partnership to develop that mentally healthy and inclusive workplace culture. Can't wait to see you all next month. Love to you all and have an incredible rest of your week. Take good care, everyone.